Hi, this is Melanie for Pardesi Reviews, and I've got a special treat. The subtitleless Rekhs and Samantha of Samantha Jo Goes both visited me this past weekend, and we recorded some of our conversations together. So this first conversation, we get into a deep topic. I turned on the camera because we were just getting into such an interesting conversation about caste in India and contrasting it with racism, which unfortunately feels like it's on the rise in America. Hi, this is Melanie of Pardesi Reviews, and I'm joined here with Rekhs, her grandniece Ananya, and Samantha of Samantha Jo Goes.
Hi.
And one of the questions that I had, we just started this discussion and I decided to just turn on the camera. I'm wondering if I see films about caste issues, and I know it's just something that some people in India can afford to ignore. Like I just saw Article 15. Were you able to see that film?
Not yet.
Okay. But I mean, in that film, Ayushmann Khurrana's character has lived a very urban life. He's lived in Europe, and he gets stationed as a police officer in a rural area where caste is still so much a part of everyday life as to who will work certain jobs and honor killings and just all sorts of realities that he's never had to deal with in his day-to-day life. And I'm wondering, you live in an urban community in Chennai. Is that something that affects the film industry? Do certain people not willing to work with other people? Or is the film industry a place where people know they can become an actor and it doesn't matter necessarily what caste they came from?
This caste system, the evils of caste society, I think is penetrated through all levels and all professions in our country. You know, it's very sad. Because originally it was only what you were good at. The Brahmin priests were singing the hymns and Vedas, and the traders and the Kshatriyas were going out for war. But there aren't any more wars like on a daily basis, so the job scenario becomes different and widespread. But the problem is, like for instance, my mother was, this is an incident I want to share. My mother was a social worker and in Bihar, and my husband and I visited her, and my husband was stunned because there was this milkman from a very low caste. I'm not into caste and I don't know what caste, but he comes every day, boils milk in my kitchen, makes a cup of tea for himself, gives my dad a cup of tea, says bye and goes away. It can never happen in South India or in many, in almost 99.99% houses. This cannot happen in India. Because this caste, it's so deep rooted, you know, like even in the industry, there are very, I don't even know what to say, you have to edit this part. Let me start again. Like in the film industry, there is a definite prejudice as far as, like I can talk for a subtitlist, there are some films where they really trample Brahmanism, Brahmins, Hindus, whatever, you know, and ridicule them. So maybe the director or producer thinks he shouldn't give it to me because I would feel bad subtitling it, or maybe not do justice to
because
it.
The jokes are at
Yeah, they're very, and it's like how we talk about the Sardarjis and say they are dumb people. It's like the Brahmin community, maybe because we keep quiet and we don't oppose a lot, are targeted quite a lot in movies. And I had more. It was a fourfold factor. A woman, and if you're very fluent in English, people get intimidated. The ones who, I don't blame them, because when you know English, people think that you're not going to talk to them in Tamil, whereas I can talk to them in Tamil also. Anyway, and the fact that I was a woman, knew English and a Tambram, and that really was an uphill task for me to get where I did. So I feel that we are all human beings with the same blood run. We should, like for instance, Pa Ranjit, whose movies are all, you've seen Kabali and his movies, he is a big advocate about how you should not be casteist, or if there is a word like
strong
that.
message.
He is very, very well read. If you saw his recent interview with Bharadwaj Rangan, have you seen it? Please go see the video. He is so well read, and what does it matter if he read only the Tamil version and didn't read English? Knowing or not knowing English should not be a criteria, right? In deciding what kind of person you are. Like I read somewhere that if someone is not fluent in English, don't look down on that person, because that person is well versed in some other language which is his or her mother tongue. So I think we should get rid of this being intimidated or ridiculing someone who doesn't know English.
Well, I also think film has a unique way to let people see someone else's story. In American Hollywood, it's films like 12 Years a Slave, where you really see what that African American slave experience was like, and the hero is the African American slave, and you're seeing all the troubles that they went through, and to really understand, or a movie like Selma, where you really seeing what Martin Luther King Jr. went through, and the marches and all the violence they faced. The recent film Pariyerum Perumal. Yeah, kids. Films like that, I think, are so powerful in how they show. It's not even just the scenes like where he's beat up or just the most extreme, but even some of the smaller everyday prejudices that someone like that faces. I hope more films like that, or Sarat or something like that, or Fandri, two Marathi films, where the hero is someone from these lower castes, and they're showing people. I'm hoping it's reaching people and changing hearts and minds in the same way film, I think, really reached a lot of people in America and changed. I mean, like Sidney Poitier in the 60s.
Oh my God.
Guess Who Came to Dinner,
Amazing
films like that.
Movie.
Really having a cultural impact and making people think.
That was just 4 characters, and how that movie was a revelation. But coming back to Pariyerum Perumal, I liked the movie, but my thing against the movie was, there's a particular character, I don't know if you remember just a couple of scenes, but he was wearing a Vaishnavite mark on his head, and he was being the strict guy, or saying, I mean, he had the dialogues which were not very pleasant. I'm saying, why mark his forehead? It could be any person. I mean, but would you, this is not a religious bias, but would you have someone who are wearing the cross saying the same thing? You wouldn't, because I personally feel Hindus/Brahmins are very liberal, very lenient about defending their faith.
Well, I mean, it could be.
You didn't even notice that this guy had this Vaishnava.
I don't know that that's the kind of thing where I can watch a film and I pick up more and more cultural clues, but there definitely are things. It could be a joke about something in politics, or it could be something like that where I'm not getting the full meaning, the full impact of the film, because I didn't grow up, I don't know all of those cultural clues.
No, even in this film, my children didn't think much of it. I mean, they loved the movie. To me, it's how, whatever you're sensitive about that hits you, right? I'm very sensitive about the fact. In fact, my husband gave me this. This is like our sacred wedding chain. And the usual tali, Tirumangalam, I don't have. He gave it for my 35th wedding anniversary, and this has the Vaishnavite mark, the conch discussing I'm a follower of Vishnu, because everybody said, oh, you're a Brahmin, is it? My work has to speak for me, Melanie. What does it matter whether I'm a Brahmin or XYZ? It really doesn't matter, right?
Well, I think,
we have to overcome that and move from that.
But I also think those films are showing how certain doors are shut to certain people and they don't have the same opportunities. I mean, that was a film where it was talking about the discrimination against someone who didn't have the education to know English. And here he was struggling in school because he was trying to fake it. He was just trying to get by, but he really hadn't had that background and he didn't know English. And that shows what a divider you can have with something like that. we were just discussing in America, it's definitely color of your skin can be, and it doesn't matter what class. My husband worked at a law firm and he had a partner. So here's someone who is having a very high income, driving a very expensive car, but it's being stopped by the police is called driving while black. Like there's no excuse, but the police officer is judging, why is this person with dark skin driving this fancy of a car? There must be something wrong. And,
how terrible.
And so that's the kind of prejudice, beyond the fact of young black men feeling afraid of being stopped by police because there's been so many police shootings of unarmed black men. So I'm not trying to say that America's perfect, because we don't have a thousands of year history of caste system. We have our own issues, and I definitely feel like the climate right now, it's
so you have color and economic
I think there's not, it's not like let's say England, where you have families that had hundreds and hundreds of year history. It's not that kind. You could have someone being snobby just because in their own generation they gained wealth, but maybe they don't want their son to be dating a poor girl or something, so it's a difference of money, but not necessarily, you can't tell how rich someone is just by their name. John Smith could be anybody.
Actually, there was a study done recently where people who have more stereotypical African American names,
that's true,
they input their resumes to companies under their birth name, and then under just like your basic like Andrea, Stacy, Chelsea, like your very generic names. And then
you mean they changed their name?
It was just
so study because African American names
they're very discriminated against.
Yeah.
So they put in their resume under two different names, and there were more callbacks for the
right. So this is a resume where there's no picture.
Ah, okay.
So that's saying, would people be discriminatory just seeing what the name of the person is and being able to maybe guess the race of the person by what their name is?
A Tamil film director, and I don't want to name him, refused to stand next. I was doing these interviews for Behindwood, and refused to stand next to me to take a snap because he would look darker. And I'm not really fair. I mean, really fair. But then he thought his face would come across darker. So that's another prejudice that is prevalent about the color of the skin too. So it's not only US. That's why I'm saying people are the same world over.
I mean, I would tell you, I love the Bahubali films, but I think one of the things that troubled me about it was that the villain tribe were the most dark-skinned ones.
It's so prevalent too. I hate that part.
And that was the part. I mean, there's so many other things that I loved about that film. I think they sort of made them look like orcs or something from the Lord of the Rings, but I don't know. It just really troubled me that automatically, okay, well, these are the villains because they have the darkest skin in this film, and that really bothered me. So
but maybe the director had a reason. We don't know.
It's in a lot of movies, though. That's the troubling part.
Yeah, I don't know. And I definitely, if you see...
You see our matrimonial ads. It says wanted fair bride. All of them. Yeah. No one says wanted bride.
And you're the fairest of bride of all.
Who's learning Tamil.
I don't know. It's... I mean, I think it's something to overcome, and I'm encouraged by some of these films that we're seeing that are really taking the issue head on and really talking about it. And I see it in my comments. People tell me this is what it was like for me when I was going to school, or this is what it was like for me when I tried to date a girl out of my caste,
reaching out to so
whatever.
many people.
So thanks this was kind of a long conversation that we had. So I'm cutting it off here, and there will be a part 2 coming up very shortly, where we really get into how much it costs, how much Rekhs actually gets paid for subtitling, which is so important for those of us who are not living in India and don't speak the languages to be able to watch these films. and we would get into more of a discussion about how the industry works, and that's coming up in part 2.